Jess World, the show is about to start. Jess World, it's no time to depart.
I love Parade. I adore every inch and crevice of this musical. Here's the rating at the beginning of the review, 5 out of 5. Perfect musical. It's a gripping, emotional, dark, romantic, mean-spirited, enlightening, and completely out there musical that wasn't that successful. Parade was a stage musical that hit Broadway in December of 1998 and ended February of 1999, lasting only 84 performances. The show was directed by the Lord and Master himself, Hal Prince, and a book by Southern playwright Alfred Urey. Hal Prince originally turned to composer and lyricist Stephen Sondheim to do the music for the show. However, Steve didn't feel up to the task, so Hal turned to 28-year-old Jason Robert Brown to compose the rape tunes, and that was possibly the best decision made in the entire production. The show premiered on Broadway to reviews of immense praise. However, audiences were so put off by the show's dark nature, tragic ending, and uncomfortable truths. The show was so off-putting that producers Livent and RCA pulled out early, refusing to pay a dime. Jason Robert Brown funded the soundtrack for the show himself, and somehow enough money was raised together to have 84 performances on Broadway. That's enough history, let's dive into Parade. Number 1. The story. Parade is based on true events. Not very many musicals are able to take on such a feat without the theatricality of stage seeping in and detaching us from the tale's honesty. Parade takes on minimalist theatricality and goes for stark realism in the show to make the truth of the story even more unsettling. The story of Parade centers around a Jewish New Yorker called Leo Frank, who is relocated to the post-Civil War South. Leo is wrongfully accused of raping and murdering one of his workers, 13-year-old Mary Fagan. The despicable act of the politicians and reporter during Leo Frank's trial is enough to make you feel physically ill, using tactics such as blackmail, witness leading, evidence tampering, and blatant lies to get the ruling that would lead to the death of Leo Frank. The first act ends with Leo being found guilty and sentenced to death. The second act is a ticking clock story about Leo's wife Lucille seeking the help of Georgia's governor, John Slayton, to try to free Leo, re-interviewing every witness and discovering the seedy underbelly of the court case. Knowing full well that commuting Leo Frank's sentence will destroy any political career he may have, out of human decency, John Slayton changed Leo Frank's death sentence to life in prison. However, when the political heads who convicted Leo get wind of this news, they turn on their own government and the law itself and take it into their own hands under the name the Knights of Mary Fagan. These men mask themselves and take Leo from his cell to Marietta, where Mary was murdered. In this scene at the end of the musical, anyone who has any investment in the story at all are on the edge of their seat. It's terrifying. These men, these politicians, are doing such an unhuman deed without regard of law, murdering a man, but having the same southern politeness to this act that they've always had. Their nature, their attitude of decency is so much more chilling than if they were simply screaming obscenities and beating Leo. They're so polite that it's scary. Leo begs the men to give his wife his wedding ring, and then the Knights of Mary Fagan hang Leo Frank by the neck until he is dead, without a scrap of evidence showing that he committed the murder to begin with. Holy shit! I bet you thought that Les Miserables was a dark musical. It's the darkness of this show that drives it to be so obscure. It's too much for the average theatergoer to handle. I feel that is an injustice in and of itself, especially because it deals with such an important incident that sparked the future of America. Allow me to explain. Due to this real-life incident, there was a mass exodus of Jews from the South due to immense anti-Semitic tensions from this case. John Slayton's career ended, leading to the one who sentenced Leo to death to become governor of Georgia. A revival of the KKK emerged due to this event, and the Jewish Anti-Defamation League was created in an attempt to avoid anything like this happening again. This is a very important musical. Now note that word, important. This isn't a fun time at the theater. This doesn't really have any songs you can tap your feet to, and the ones that you can, you feel guilty about. It points the finger at those who watch it and asks you for more. It accuses you of turning off your thoughts and the belief that everything is black and white, and forces you to think deeper about any and all situations that it throws at you. It wants the audience to gain some perspective about the world around them. The aforementioned theme extends past the blatant presence in the courtroom dilemma. Let us analyze the first scene in the show. A young man singing about the two loves of his life. his homeland, and his girl, and how he is off to fight for them both.
In the land where honor lives and breathes, the old red hills of home.
On the surface, it seems like an uplifting and patriotic song that we are supposed to support this young man in his plight. But then it is revealed that this man is in fact a Confederate soldier fighting for his right to own other human beings. Yeah. This young man grows up to be a one-legged, patriotic veteran who also happens to be one of the men who call for the head of Leo Frank. All expectations are dead, and you're horrible to think otherwise. This show is constantly pulling you back into perspective. Another scene where the audience is forced into a new perspective is the scene that involves two of John Slayton's black houseworkers in a segment that is nearly a non sequitur. This starts Act 2, and the audience is reeling from the injustices of Leo Frank's conviction and how awful that is. But the audience is forced into a new perspective when these two people analyze Leo's case with the attitude of, there are black people being hung every day, but everyone suddenly gets up in arms when it's a white man and a little white girl.
They're coming now, yes sirree. 'Cause a white man gonna get hung, you see. There's a black man swinging in every tree, but they don't never pay attention.
Yeah, I bet you didn't see that one coming. The show asks the audience to stand as Leo's jury. We know just as little about him as his contemporaries. The only bit of information we know about him before the murder is that he hates living in the South, he's a bit nervous, and he's a workaholic. The show almost asks you to believe that Leo is guilty. There are no suggested probable culprits. We are simply meant to go on the character's word that he did not commit this sin. The final example of this theme that I will state, and a plethora of others, is that of teenage boy Frankie Epps, whose first scene involves him almost creepily stalking Mary Fagan, begging the girl to go to the picture show with him, asking for attention, but as soon as she's out of eyeshot, moving on to the next girl.
Go on, go on, go on, go on. Why, Iola, you going to pictures tonight?
From first glance, he would seem like the usual troublemaking kid, goofy, going girl to girl. But after Mary dies, he dedicates himself to vengeance on her killer, being one of the men pulling the hanging noose on Leo.
I want to rest until I know he's burning in the raging fires of hell forevermore.
The story is antagonistic towards the audience, but is trying to force the audience to learn something, look at things differently. I think that is something important that we need in our society. In cases like Casey Anthony, Trayvon Martin, O.J. Simpson, we are narrow-minded human beings. We see one news story and take it at face value. We get offended, we get up in arms, we get violent, and we get antagonistic. With the ability to communicate and express opinions so easily, we don't take in any opinions that may shake what's already established. We live in a world where something along the lines of the Leo Frank trial could happen again. The world needs a wake-up call, and Parade can lead to that. Whew. Now that I got that out of the way, I must now say there are moments of levity in this musical, where we can feel emotions. The darkness of the main story is backlit by the glowing romance between Leo Frank and his wife Lucille. They begin the musical cold and distant from one another, but through the trauma of the murder of a little girl, the two become closer. Seeing these two get together is one of the greatest parts of this show. Finally, happiness. Short-lived, but it's there! The story is dark, gripping, challenging, and genius. It begs us to take on all the darkness that society has to offer, without the single bit of sugarcoating. Prejudice still ringing true today, with Christian scapegoaters who target specific groups of people. Perhaps it's no longer the Jews, but much like the past, they are targeting gays, feminists, transgenders, and so on, just like they did the Jewish man in this show. Now that I've spoken about the story, allow me to talk about the characters. That was heavy as shit. Number 2, the characters. The key word of the day is motivation. Every character is motivated by whatever they view as true justice. And how we are to define what is lawful good, what is unlawful good, and what is unlawful evil and even lawful evil. Every character's actions are performed to further what they believe is the best form of justice. Our antagonists are simply people that want to punish someone that they think murdered a little girl, and our hero is someone who ignores and berates his wife and thinks about nothing but work. Nothing is black and white between good people and bad people. There are no people that are evil. There are simply people that see the world differently and view the definition of good and bad as something different than you do. Take, for example, the show's prosecuting attorney, Dorsey. He wants to do justice for the family at any cost. He may have unjustly convicted a man before the case even began, but it's obvious he does believe Leo killed the girl. It wasn't just because he wanted to kill a Jew. He is devoutly committed to his beliefs of good and evil, and wants to see that justice is followed through to the best of his ability. This has been a trait throughout both of the careers of Hal Prince and Jason Robert Brown. Good people are not entirely good, and bad people are not entirely bad. Nothing is ever as it seems. These are possibly the best characters ever put onto Broadway, and now you can see why it pisses me off so much that people care more about Christine Daae, who has the personality of tofu. Next section. Number 3. The music. Jason Robert Brown. What can I say about you? You're my favorite composer, your music simply does things to me, and your lyrics battle Sondheim in their eminence. Why don't you get more love, Brown? I mean, you've had success and a long career for your age, but people knew names like Andrew Lloyd Webber, Bobby Lopez, Stephen Sondheim, and even Frank Wildhorn better than you. If any of those people won a Tony, the editors would not even consider cutting their speech to shreds like they did yours. Why is this?
Because Jason Robert Brown's a dick.
Well, that's fair. I mean, when Stephen Sondheim has to write you a letter explaining how rude you were to him and enlightening the man to proper etiquette at performances, you've got some things to work out. But shouldn't music and lyrics surpass the person itself? Like how we can listen to Wagner and ignore the fact that he was a Nazi.
So you're saying Jason Robert Brown's a Nazi?
That wasn't what I said, but whatever. Fuck you. Jason Robert Brown is a fucking inspired composer and a well-crafted lyricist, and should be up there with the greats, because he is one of them. If you have time, buy his music off iTunes. I greatly recommend Parade, Songs for a New World, Bridges of Madison County, oh, and of course the last 5 years. Nevertheless, Parade. The music of Parade is very Sondheim-esque in its usage, with the brightest and upbeat music being used at the most tragic moments. An example would be the most upbeat song ever put on Broadway that year following the conviction of Leo's death. Damn. Also, may I point out that this show is pushing 3 hours and it has little to no reprises. The only times music is repeated is when a certain topic is revisited, such as when Slayton goes back to the witnesses and they reprise songs they sang at the testimony. Aside from that, and a reprised line here or there, it's mostly new material throughout. Eat that, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
No, it don't make sense to me that she won't be around.
The funeral scene begins with a hymn written by William Cowper, called There is a Fountain Filled with Blood, with new instrumentation by Jason Robert Brown. The addition of this hymn, along with Brown's other music, added a strong film of verisimilitude around this entire show. Then it fades into all of Mary Fagan's friends, relatives, and stalkers talking about how amazing she was. It also begins Frankie Epps' undying need to find the killer of Mary Fagan. This scene can break a person's heart so hard.
Gonna find the bio-villain, who will defy the gravest doubts? Who's gonna stop the Jew from killing? Who's gonna swing that hammer?
Leo Frank's Trial is a long, ongoing segment consisting of many songs, many testimonies, and many different tones with each song and testimony. I will talk about 4 of the most prominent songs in the trial.
I'm in the hall, and then he's there. He passes much too close.
The Factory Girls / Come Up to My Office. This is a group testimony of the girls who worked in Leo Frank's factory, where they claim that he made them feel extremely uncomfortable, constantly requesting the girls to come up to his office. They all report the same thing after being coached by Hugh Dorsey. In the middle of the song, a flashback occurs, and the scared and neurotic Leo Frank becomes a sexual monster, seducing the girls, becoming the version of the man that the jury wants to see.
Take a break and swing by, honey, no one has to know but me and you. That you came, that you came, that you came, that you came. When you came, when you came, when you came, when you came. If you came, if you came, if you came, if you came. So come on, come on.
for raising her poor and for taking her out of the school.
Here's Mary Fagan's mother's testimony, elaborating on her wish that her daughter will show her forgiveness in heaven, also throwing a final insult to Leo when she is finished.
Said we're playing the game, that's what he said, And little Mary's kinda crumpled in the corner. He said, you don't understand. She didn't want to play the game, and so I went and hit her. See, I had to hit her.
Jim Conley is a janitor of the pencil factory, which Leo was superintendent of, and he is also the one most likely person to have murdered and raped Mary Fagan. His testimony was the most damning towards Frank, telling a story of how Leo asked Conley to watch the door while he had women in his office, and Jim carrying Mary to the basement after Leo killed her. Out of all the songs in the trial sequence, this makes you cringe and anger the most.
I know it makes no sense. I swear I don't know why. You see me as I am. You can't believe I'd lie. You can't believe I'd do these deeds.
This was Leo's closing statements, and the only time he acts in the entire trial. He pleads with the jury to see that he can never hurt a child. He's shocked that anyone can view him in such a negative light. It's ended by the jury saying he is guilty.
Tell my uncle not to worry, tell the reaper not to hurry, make the hangman stop his drumming, 'cause I'm coming into town to win the day. Somehow I have it with my scheming, screw things up beyond redeeming, and we're finally on our way. And no, this isn't over, hell, it's just begun.
This is not over yet is one of the most upbeat points in this show. Leo finding out the governor has reopened his case. He's overjoyed, hopping around his prison cell like a child on Christmas Day. This is made tragic by the horrid end that we know is coming, and that all this work, all this happiness, is all for naught. This is quite possibly my favorite song in the show, and it's probably the most catchy.
All the days gone by to never show I loved you so, and I never knew anything at all.
Leo and Lucille finally get to spend one night together while in prison. They consummate their love, and he explains his guilt for not treating her with all the love that she deserved. This is the final stop for their love, coming to the love that is as real as it is here from the bitter indifference they started as. They are finally equals, and after years of marriage, they are finally lovers.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Before Leo is lynched, he lets out a final Hebrew prayer to the tune of the Old Red Hills of Georgia. It is his last Semitic spit in the face of all the Southerners before he shuffled loose the mortal coil. Then the show ends on the same note it began with, belting out the Old Red Hills of Georgia once more. The music is absolutely beautiful, one of Jason Robert Brown's best scores. I'm not even scraping the surface with the amount of good songs in this show. I recommend you buy the Tumblr Warehouse soundtrack. You will be in for a treat if you do. Number 4, Overall. Overall, Parade is a really friggin' good musical that I don't believe gets the amount of credit it deserves. I think that it needs to be adapted into a dark and gritty musical film in the vein of Alan Parker's Evita. I would also like to see a revival onto the Broadway stage, with a Donmar Warehouse's style of staging. If you have some time, listen to the show on YouTube. You won't be disappointed. Unless you're not a fan of being sad, then watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. That'll cheer you up, I guess. Thank you for watching. I'm Jess, now get out of my world.
Mary, Mary, the angel child. Mary, Mary, the angel child. Still your name and your soul are defiled. Still your name and your soul are defiled. Thank God you can't hear the things they say. But someone's gonna pay. Someone's gonna pay. Someone's gonna pay.
the strong and sure. Fight like hell for the land of the pure. Teach the traitor to run away. Georgia, home of the strong and sure. Fight like hell for the land of the pure. Teach the traitor to run away.